Oh yeah, sure, sure. Okay, so yeah, thanks everybody for coming. My name is Rob Maher, and I'm going to be giving the crash course today on making a game from start to finish. And like I said, I'm Rob Maher. I'm one of the co-founders of Castle Pixel, which is a small indie game company. And let's see, I went to college for media arts. I've worked in a variety of different tech jobs, ranging from like advertising to like, health tech. And the last two games I created were Rex Rocket and Blossom Tales, which is the most recent one. So that's me in a nutshell. And these are the steps I use for making a video game. Everyone has their own kind of secret formula, and it's like different for everyone. But these are kind of the pillars that I look to whenever I set out on creating a new game. So there's the conceptualizing phase, scoping my concepts, gauging interest in my concepts, getting to know my target audience, who the game's for. And then there's the actual production, building out the concepts into something that you want to, charge people money for, or, put out into the world, or what have you. So we're going to be diving into each of these bullet points in more depth. So first up, conceptualizing. This is my favorite part of making a video game, hands down. It's like unlimited possibilities. You can try things out. You can explore different ideas. I typically like to start with just game mock-ups, like in Photoshop. I'll start putting together, you know, how I want my idea to look like. And things like that, is just real quick. I might even make like five concepts for extremely different games, and just see which one I have the most interest in. After I get through that phase of like, I've mocked up something that looks like it could be cool. I'll move on to the next step, which is just creating a bunch of quick prototypes for the core mechanics that I want to have in the game. The cool thing about this is that it's really low effort. You just do it quick and dirty. You can send out your prototypes to people, have them play around with it, collect feedback. Um, and it's really just, the best time to explore all the ideas that you want to try out. Um, and at this phase of conceptualizing, like when you're making prototypes and then sending them out, it starts what I kind of think of as like a feedback loop, right? You make your prototype, send it out to somebody, get feedback on it, and then you incorporate the feedback back into your prototype, and then you redo the loop, right? So you send it back out, get the feedback, make adjustments, and each cycle that you go through this loop, it just kind of refines your concept more and more and more. And the second to last bullet point here, be fluid. That just means like, let's say you made a prototype, you send it out, people hate it. You go through the loop, you refine it, you try it again, and it's just not working. Just be ready to drop it. Maybe just go somewhere else, try a different idea. Just be ready to leave things on the floor, the cutting room floor. And the last one, whoops, collaborate. It's kind of the same deal. Ask your contemporaries, like other game developers, about your concepts, your prototypes, just this overall idea of your game, and collect feedback and do the loop. So that's conceptualizing. So once you have like a game concept, you've refined it a bit, you're ready to move on to the next step, which is scoping, right? So in scoping, you got to estimate, how long production of your concept's going to take. Uh, you might have like all the core mechanics from like Grand Theft Auto, but it's really hard for one person to make Grand Theft Auto. So you kind of got to recognize what your limitations are, and then kind of scope your game around that. So uh, if you have like all the Grand Theft Auto mechanics, maybe you just got to scope the game down. Do a giant story, and you can get done with it, and before you're like 200 years old. So um Also, part of the scoping phase is identifying like what's core to your game and what's cuttable to the game. I kind of think about my game features in two categories. There's like core mechanics that I have to get these elements into my game. And the other mechanics and the other features are just things that are nice to have. They're stuff that I could ship the game without, but it'd be great if I had them in there, right? And so by having this kind of category of cuttable or variable features of your game, you can kind of like use those to relieve pressure uh, when you're in production mode, right? You can be like, okay, well, I'm not going to hit this deadline. Maybe I can like toss some of these nice to have features, and I can still stay on my schedule. And that's kind of bleeds into the next point there, which is rescaling all throughout the production of the game. So if you have a 5 month long scope for your game for the production, you're in month two and you only have like 1/5 of the game done, you can rescale and you can like kind of rescope and take things out, right? And also setting goals and deadlines for the scoping, so you can say, I'm doing 5 dungeons to my game. It's a 5 month long production schedule. I'm gonna put like 1 month into each of my zones. So that's scoping. Big pitfall to scoping is, you have this game and you have all these things that you want to get into it, and it's like you might be like a year over your production schedule, and like it's just not. So being able to pull out components of the game to remain on schedule helps a lot. Okay, that brings me to gauging interest in the game, and I kind of think this might be the most important step in the entire process. Like, games take forever to make, right? Well, they can take forever. They might take an afternoon, they might take forever, but regardless, if you're going to be pouring a bunch of energy into a game, it's your time, and you're spending your life making this thing. You want to gauge interest in your target audience to make sure that people are going to be interested in playing it. And I think one of the best ways to do that is just leveraging social media. If you're in the conceptualizing phase and you want to gauge interest in like 5 concepts, just post them on Twitter with, relevant hashtags and see which one gets the most likes. If you can't decide like which one you want to roll with, just post them on social media. It's a great way to get feedback and incorporate that into the loop. Um, and it's really just a game changer to me. Another great way is Kickstarters. For Blossom Tales, we originally ran a Kickstarter. It didn't hit the goal, but it did get us like, I think like 850 people supported the Kickstarter, and that was 850 people that we were able to add to like a mailing list, and we can stay in contact with, and we could send out test builds to get feedback from. Um, and if you think you have this really great game idea and you put it on Kickstarter and it doesn't do very well at all, time to move on to maybe a different project, or changing your game concept to attract more interest in it. So Kickstarters are great. We never hit our goal for our Kickstarter, but we did attract a publisher, which was amazing. And they actually stepped in to fund us and work with us to actually produce Blossom Tales. So it was kind of like a lifesaver for us, really. Another one of my favorite resources for gauging interest is developer forums. So there's a particular one that I use called TIG Source, which is like a game developer forum, and you can make a post on there and start like a devlog of your production. You can post screenshots and videos and stuff like that, and it's really cool because TIG Source is like just all developers. So you actually get feedback from other game developers, which I think is maybe even more valuable feedback than like your target audience playtester, right? Um, and early access. So Steam early access. You can post your game up there, and that's a great way to gauge interest. You know, if you get 100 people interested in early access, or 10,000 people interested in early access, you know, you got something cool, right? And you can use all these people that kind of sign up early for your game to, you know, run prototypes and demos and all sorts of stuff. And all of this stuff builds the community, right? It builds a community for your game, whether you're posting on Twitter or forums or Kickstarter. It creates this community of people around your game. And not only does that, you know, reassure you that there's good interest in your game, but it also helps you keep motivated. Uh, so that's gauging interest, right? Next part is knowing your audience. So this could almost be a part of like the conceptualizing phase, but it's kind of the oddball out here. Uh, Whenever you're making a game, you got to know your audience, right? You got to know who you're making the game for. If I'm making like a Zelda like game and my target audience is 10-year-olds, might not go over so well, right? Like it might not be intuitive for them to play. They might not know what they're doing or what to expect. Um, but if you target, you know, 30-year-olds like myself, um, they're probably chances are they're going to know exactly how to play the game. It's going to be super intuitive for them, and you'll be able to tailor the game like, you know, to your audience. Which kind of brings me to my next point here, which is playtest analytics, for knowing your audience. So when we would send out builds, we actually had like some analytics built into it that would record playthroughs. Like we would send out surveys with the game whenever we sent out like test builds, and we would have people fill out the surveys, and that was great for collecting feedback. But sometimes people don't like write everything down in the surveys. So we would actually like record data about the playthrough of the game. So like where people died at, where people spent time at, what people did, all sorts of stuff. And so we were able to watch like people like died of bosses, for example. Like people in the survey might be like, "Oh yeah, I had a great time. There weren't very many points that I was frustrated at," and um, they wouldn't really go into the specifics. But with our analytics, we were able to like overlay like 100 playthroughs of the game and be like, "Oh, okay, well, you know, everybody's dying like 10 plus times at this certain boss. You should probably make that easier, right?" So all the analytics that you can capture about your playtests uh, really help to get, you know, like who's actually playing the game, right? And also where to market. Your audience, you know, visits certain websites, they follow certain people, and getting to know like where your audience hangs out at can usually dictate like where you want to market the game to. So for like Blossom Tales, we made a whole list of like just similar things like related games. Like I would look up other Zelda-like games on Google, and I would like write down all the websites that the articles were posted on, and then I would try to get like Blossom Tales PR on those same websites. Um, and so yeah, know everything about your audience. Know what they like, know what they dislike, know what they're expecting, what's intuitive for them, all that good stuff. And then production. So biggest part of production for me is just not giving up and you know, believing in your concept. I found that was probably like one of the hardest parts of game development for me is like working on something that everyone else I knew was just like, oh, whatever, you're making a video game, sure. Um, you know, and like believing in yourself and just seeing your product through through, you know, start to finish. I also like building things in chunks. So I would send out builds for Blossom Tales in like test chunks, right? I would send out like an intro build that I could send to people, or a build that was just like the last dungeon or the last boss. And you know, it was all wired up with analytics. I could collect all this data on it, and so again, you know, there's this like loop: send out a build, collect all the feedback from it, incorporate all the data into a new build, and then ship it back out. So there's this like constant cycle. Um, and yeah, next bullet point: make sure it's fun. That was like a big one for me. Like after playing through Blossom Tales like 100 plus times, it was hard for me to be like, is this actually fun? Like, is it fun? So you could do that in surveys. Making sure that people actually find the game enjoyable and they're not just doing you like a favor walking through it. Um, and yeah, make adjustments if you need to. If it's not fun, make adjustments until it's fun for you and whoever's actually like playing the game. And big big part is staying motivated, which is kind of like don't giving up. Uh, I think I probably got most of my motivation from doing things like social media posts, where you make a post of like a screenshot or a video and you get a bunch of likes and a bunch of people commenting on it, and it really helps you. It's reassuring and gives you like the motivation to keep going forward and the reassurance that what you're doing is actually cool. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening to my talk. I'd be super happy to answer any questions you guys have about Blossom Tales or running a Kickstarter or anything. So thanks, guys. Oh, okay. Oh, hey, yeah, I'm still in here. Okay, so let's see. Just a quick question. I'm reading Macaroni's question here. Would you get more people to donate to your Kickstarter by letting them know about it on social media like Instagram and Twitter, or would you still get the same amount of people to donate if you just make your Kickstarter on the Kickstarter website and you know that it's necessary info without promoting it on other apps? Running the Kickstarter, I made as much noise as I possibly could, right? I made after we put the Kickstarter together before actually publishing it live, I went around and I creeped everybody who had ever said anything about Zelda. I made like a giant spreadsheet of emails that were for journalists at gaming websites, like pretty much any gaming website, um, Zelda game fan websites, everything and anything that had to do with Zelda or other Zelda-like games. I wrote down contact emails for, and I email blasted people. I posted on Twitter, Instagram. I was tweeting at people. I tweeted at celebrities, Zelda fans, all sorts of people. I just tried to make as much noise as humanly possible. And I do think that posting on like Twitter really helped a lot. Instagram, back when I ran that Kickstarter, I'm not even sure if Instagram was a thing. It was in like 2013, 2014, but I don't think I hit up Instagram, but I did make a bunch of noise on Twitter back then. And I do think that, kind of beating your war drum really helps attract attention. Um, I got like the owner of newgrounds.com to like give it an endorse. And I posted that to the Kickstarter after he did that. I got quotes from like IGN journalists and threw those on the Kickstarter page. Um, and yeah, I think making as much noise as possible about your Kickstarter is definitely beneficial. So this question's from Dave. Can you tell us more about how you record and gather analytics? Yeah, so we started collecting analytics with like Rex Rocket. That was like when we first like built in these game analytics. Um, and would record every little piece of data about Rex Rocket. Rex Rocket was a 2D platformer, a lot like Mega Man, and we would send out builds and with surveys and stuff like that. But it was like, okay, well, how long did this person play? And like, did they get through to like the first boss even? Like they didn't really answer. And so we built in these analytics so that we could actually go through and practically like play back what they did. So the analytics would do things like what killed the player, what room they're in, what room did they go to, what boss uh, were they having trouble on, and by collecting all this, you get that kind of data from one playthrough of the game, and it's like, oh, okay, well, this person might just be bad at platformers or whoever. But when you overlay that data with like 100 other playthroughs, and you can, watch people running through the game, and we actually made it like a heat map where it's like, okay, if 10 people die in this room, like your color's yellow, and if 50 people die, it's red, and that kind of thing. So we were able to like see like hot spots of difficulty in the map, and we could kind of make it easier. So it's like a yellow, and we only had like or like one or two splotches of, or not splotches, but like hard rooms in a certain zone, to kind of like bring down the difficulty level a little bit. So yeah, recording everything you can about playthroughs is just invaluable to me. Blossom Tales, we basically did the same thing, where you could see like what item a person was using, what enemy killed them, all sorts of stuff. So it was really neat. Um, so that's Dave's question. Let's see, Glenn's question. How did you go about preparing your Kickstarter? I keep hearing that is a huge commitment. How is it different from managing regular social stuff? So Kickstarter was really cool. You can go on Kickstarter and like set up your page. You can post videos and graphics and all that stuff. So we took all of the mock stuff for Blossom Tales. We hadn't coded anything at the point in the Kickstarter, right? It was just all animations. Like I put in animations in Flash. If you guys, any of you guys have ever worked with Macromedia or Adobe Flash, um, I mocked everything up in there, put together a little like presentation video, and that was our Kickstarter video. Um, it was a really big commitment. Like I think it runs for like we ran it for 21 days, and it was like a full-time job. Like I was constantly emailing people. Like I said for the other question, I was constantly, trying to get people to talk about Blossom Tales, to get interviews. I did like podcasts. So it was a lot of work. There's also like comments that people leave, and you want to answer them. Uh, and yeah, even over the course of like for Rex Rocket, had like one reward that was like T-shirts. So it's like an ongoing commitment for Kickstarter, even after like the game's done, right? Depending on what your rewards are. Like if you are going to give out like a physical copy of the game, you gotta figure out like all the logistics that go into getting a physical copy out, and it's a lot. We actually didn't do a physical copy, but that's like an example. Um, I think we were gonna do a physical copy for Blossom Tales. So like I had to look into how much money carts were and all that stuff. The cool thing about like my favorite thing about the Kickstarter though is that even if you don't make your goal, you still get all the people that said that they were interested in your game, right? So Blossom Tales failed, but we had 850 people's emails that were willing to fork over money for like Blossom Tales, like for a pre-order. So I thought that was super cool. We email those people like still today, Um, so yeah, it's a community building at the very worst, right? If one person donates, it's a plus one to your game's community. Let's see. Regarding the conceptualization phase, are there any signs you've come recognize that actionable, successful ideas share? What distinguishes just a cool idea from a successful game during this phase? Well, I don't know. That's a great question. I think it's just that's like, if you're playing a game and like, if you guys are familiar with that phrase, does it spark joy, right? Are you like, does that bring you joy? Does playing the game bring you joy? Is it, um, that special mix of like frustration and satisfaction? Uh, it's that secret sauce, right? If you could bottle that and identify it, you could just package that up and everyone would be millionaires, right? Um, I think that a lot of it has to do with not developing a game in an echo chamber and using things like social media to, take your idea and be like, hey, does everyone else think that this is cool? And I mean, back in the day, like when you're making like when Miyamoto was making Mario, it was just his development team. Like they couldn't even post things on social media. So it's like they spent all this time making it, and then it's like the only time the world gets to see it is when it's actually out the door and like in a cartridge. Um, so I think that like getting your concepts out there and seeing which ones get traction on social media, it's a big indicator that you probably got a successful idea. Um, and yeah, I don't know. It's just do other people also think it's cool? Okay, so this one's from Dave. At what point in the project should you start trying to get people to write articles? What do you have to share with authors for them to be interested to write an article? Stills gives actual builds. I would say after the conceptualization phase, like when you're trying to gauge interests, well, actually, even after like gauging interests, once you have stuff to like actually show people, and you've committed to an idea, like you're like, okay, this is my game, this is what it's going to be. I'm moving into production. That's when I would probably start trying to get some journalists' attention. I would be wrapping up screenshots or videos or whatever, sending it out to people and seeing if they're interested in an interview or posting an article or whatever kind of noise they're willing to make for you. Just hit them up and see if they actually will. Um, I would say you don't even need a build. You can just go up to somebody, a journalist, and say, "Hey, I'm making this game. Are you interested in it? Do you want to work with me to promote it?" Um, so yeah, and yeah, that's it for the questions. Anyone else got any questions?
One.
Okay. Let's see. We got with respect to playtesting, do you try to come up with a plan or do you allow testers to roam free as it were? That's a great question. So if I like when we were developing Blossom Tales, FTG went through a company that they would actually send builds to these people to play test it and find bugs and like all that stuff. So if it's a playtester's first playthrough of the game, personally, I want them going through it from the very start of the game. Um, so that they would experience the game how everyone like the general public would experience the game like from the start. After they've actually played through it once, then I would be comfortable with being like, oh, okay, I'm going to send you like the last zone of the game. Would you play through it? Is it fun for you? Did you like it? What do you think about it? What would you change? And start getting that feedback loop. I don't think I'd let them just like free roam in the game without like any rules. I would want to recreate like the actual game that people would play. Sorry, Horatio, does that answer your question? Cool. Very cool. All right, I see macaroni typing here. Okay, how did I find my co-founder? Um, we had a mutual friend, right? So I started Blossom Tales, like the original concept for it, way back in like 2012, right? And I was super cheesed about it, and I was like, okay, this game's gonna be great, and yada yada yada. Um, and then I was working with this one guy, and he got busy with life, right? He was a student, he had to go to college, and he didn't have time to work on the game anymore. So Blossom Tales just sat in a directory on my computer somewhere, right? And then I started pinging just everybody that was on my Skype contacts list, looking for a developer to work with. Like I'd send people a message like, "Hey, I'm looking for a developer. You know anybody?" And so through one of our mutual friends, I got put together with my buddy Tyler, and we started Castle Pixel. Basically, we made Rex Rocket, and then I dusted off Blossom Tales, and we made that too. Okay, so we got this one from Macaroni. Let's say for your game, you're planning to implement a website for it where stuff like global rankings and scores will show, and you want that to be a core part of your game. So when I'm getting someone to test the game, should I make them test it with the website set up and running, or should I let the person test the game as it is and make them test the game with the website feature later? So let me think about that for a second. I mean, I'm not sure if it would work, but you might be able to set that up with like just mock data. If the website's not ready to go, you could always like mock out like how the scores would look or like factor into your game um, by just using like fake data. I would try to do everything I could to get it to as closest to the actual gameplay experience as possible, even if you have to like fake it a little bit. Um, but I mean, you could also test it separately too. Like you could test it prior to implementing the high scores and rankings and stuff like that. Or you could wait and make sure that they go together. Like it's hard for me to gauge how like integrated those two concepts are into the game and like how they work together and stuff like that. But yeah, uh, either or. Let's see. Is there any one pitfall you've identified in the process that you would say we should look out for to make sure we don't fall into that? Depression and like giving up. I know a lot of people that have been like, "Oh yeah, I'm making this game," and then they get demotivated and disillusioned. It's. I think a lot of that happens to come like from working in an echo chamber. Um, where it's like you're questioning what you're doing with your life. You've sunk like 1,000 hours into something, and it's I think getting outside the echo chamber, sharing it with people, and getting that positive motivation to like keep going forward. That's my personally my biggest pitfall is questioning like what I'm doing and if it's the right thing and if it's fun. And so collaboration and sharing can help you avoid that. You know what? I don't know if audience building is like tick source's strength. So sorry, this is from Glenn. Would you consider the tick source forum to still be a good place for audience building in 2021? I honestly haven't used tick source since I've made Blossom Tales. I think I had like a dev blog for Blossom Tales on there. Um, I would say it's excellent for collecting developer feedback. Like developers know all the tricks for problems, right? Like, and if another developer sees a problem and they have the solution, they can share it with you on TickSource. And I think that is just such a unique source of just developer feedback that it's like invaluable. I'm not sure if the audience is huge on there. Like I couldn't even name anybody right now from TickSource, that has been with me like the entire way through my game development career. But um, I would say it's excellent for feedback. Maybe not so much for audience, just because it's kind of like limited scope, right? Like it's just game developers. So yeah. Oh yeah, for sure, Macaroni. You could send it in chat. See, anyone else got any questions out there? Hey, thanks, guys. I had a great time talking to you guys today. It's I'm not like the best speech giver, so it's great practice for me, and I had a good time. Help me.
No, Rob, I thought it was great. I took a lot of notes that I'll be sharing with everyone. I thought it was a very nice, succinct talk. I really appreciate you coming and speaking with everyone.
Oh yeah, no, thanks for having me. Like the previous presenters, like Adam Saltzman, particular, like those guys are my idols, and I'm totally honored to be like in this just in the lineup with them.
I think we
Adam,
have recordings of their talks.
I know I'm gonna listen to Adams like at some point here tonight. I'm gonna put it on in the background and listen to him. He for Flixel, the framework he started like way back in the Flash days. That was like my first intro in the game development, and I was like a Flixel nut, right? My first game I made in Flixel, in Flash, and like I used to idolize that guy. Like I just think that he's like the coolest guy out there. One time he liked one of my tweets I posted, and like I like fell over dead. I was like, oh my god, Adam Saltzman just randomly liked one of my tweets. He wasn't a follower. It was just like I tagged an article with pixel or a post with the pixel art hashtag, and um, he liked it, so it was super cool.
Thanks so much for taking the time. This has been really enlightening.
Oh yeah, it's totally my pleasure, guys. Oh, okay. So Glenn has another question. How did you go about porting your game to Switch? What was the experience like? So we, our publisher, I say something. Okay, never mind. So yeah, our publisher got an actual porting company to port our game to Switch. We had developed Blossom Tales using the Mono Game framework with like C sharp. So it was seamless to just give our code base over to this porting company, and they ported it over. If we were going to do that again, we would probably handle it ourselves. But with our production like timeline and stuff, we didn't really have time to like port it over. Getting that done, and our publisher was like, "Well, we're just gonna, we're expecting them, make our investment back, so we're just gonna pay our porting company and the port it to Switch." So it's really easy. I did have to do some graphics for like the Switch buttons, uh, but I'm pretty sure that was like it. I'm trying to think if there was any like issues that we had with the Switch, and not really. It was really pretty easy. Monogame is uh, develop once, publish everywhere. So I don't think it was difficult for the publisher. Yeah, Monogame is a great framework. I like it a lot. I think it's great. Okay, Macaroni's posting his website here. Those use okay, cool. It's a rhythm game. Okay. But it also shows on the website, so others can search your name on the website and see your scores. Okay, cool. So it's like a high ranking score, or like rankings and score website. That's really cool. So when you play the game, it posts up here. Yeah, I would say like I was you could probably play test the game without like the website being fully functional. You could let people know that it's coming, and that's something that they could look forward to. But if there's no like feedback from the scores and the rankings like back into the game, like if you had some kind of mechanic where it was like, oh, if you get into like the top 100 players, you unlock the next stage, you unlock like a special ability or something. I would say it'd be probably safe to play test it separately prior to getting the website operational. That's really cool though. This looks sweet. Hit accuracy. Yeah. ranking. I love rankings. It always adds that extra aspect of like competitiveness to a game. So yeah, that's sweet. All right, cool. Anybody else got any questions or comments or anything at all? I'm trying to think if there's like anything I may have missed. Oh, what one of my next project? I can't talk about my next project yet, but there is a next project. Sometime here in the next like month or two, I'll be able to actually talk about it. But there is a project, another project coming. Oh, sorry, I just forgot about what I was going to say. Oh, when we released Blossom Tales, we released on Steam, right? And like our sales were horrible for Blossom Tales, which is like if you guys look up Blossom Tales, it's like a Nintendo game, right? We released it on Steam. It was horrible. I was like crushed. I was like, oh my God, I just spent like a year and a half making this game and we put it out on Steam and it sucks because like no one's buying and my life's over and I have to go get a day job now and it's like awful, right? Then it came out on Switch and like it was a total turnaround. It was like my and like I went, it was a total roller coaster, like an up and down. So n- know your platform, right? Like what platform is your game going to do the best on and target that one first. Like if I were to make a sequel to Blossom Tales, I would be like, okay, Switch is prime, like first priority. Let's build it for Switch. Let's get like local co-op and all this stuff. And um, we're going to publish there first, forget about Steam. Um, so if you were making like, maybe a game like Crash Bandicoot or something like unique to PlayStation, target the new PlayStation, like do PS5. If there are gamers that are PlayStation gamers playing PlayStations, like get it on there. Like um I was incredibly surprised. Like I thought it would do like, pretty good on Steam like Blossom Tales, but it did amazing on Switch. And it is a Nintendo game. Like I built it for Nintendo fans. So um, the platform that you put your game on can have a huge impact on the success of your game. Yeah, Among Us, it's crazy how that game went. Like it just kind of from what I read about it, it was like mediocre first release, and then it just becomes like exploded in popularity. Like it's really cool. Um, yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's, right? I mean, these things aren't infallible, right? Like Dave is pointing out here. Five Nights at Freddy's had 0 backers on Kickstarter. That guy did not give a crap. He was like, I believe in my game. I'm gonna make it anyway. Screw Kickstarter. Um, and yeah, super hit. So take it all with a grain of salt, I guess. I think Blossom Tales was in a bunch of Nintendo promotions when it first came out. Yeah, we got put on like the IGN top 15 games on the Switch when we first released. Nintendo ran a bunch of promotions that like featured Blossom Tales. Um, so yeah, Blossom Tales really did like we we released in like kind of a sweet spot where the Switch was still very new. The online store hadn't been totally saturated, so there was definitely like an element of timing that was involved with the success of Blossom Tales. Like if we had released it today, I'm not so certain that it would do as well, just because there's so much more competition on the store. There's so many other games like coming to the Switch. So yeah, I don't know. There is an element of timing in there for sure. Oh, Night in the Woods, yeah. How did that go for them, Dave?
Yeah, so Night in the Woods, we're so Rob lives like a 10-minute drive away from me, and the Night in the Woods guys, they're pretty close too. So I went and saw them talk locally. Um, I think maybe it was when the PS3 or was it the PS4 came out, is right whenever their game was ready to be out. And so normally whenever a new console comes out, they don't have a whole lot of like AAA titles yet because they take a long time to build. So PlayStation actually saw Night in the Woods, thought it looked really cool, and handled them going to stuff like PAX East, like they gave them a booth and everything, just because they needed stuff in the store to help sell their consoles. So that really helped Night in the Woods just the whole
Oh
timing
yeah,
of
that's
everything.
fascinating. Yeah, that sounds extremely similar to kind of how it went with Blossom Tales. So yeah, if you guys can do it, because it's probably worth it.
In PS5.
Hey, yeah, it's Blossom Tales released on Switch. Like, I think Switch was out for like a year once it's like or less. Probably got a good chance. Yeah, PS7. Hop Hop Solo Dev really have a deadline, and you there's features that you want to get in there. You get them in there. If there's something like pressing, then don't cut anything. If you are working on a tight deadline, though, make sure to have like some features that you can like chop if needed. Like they're not core; they're just nice to have. You can use those to stay on track. I think Blossom Tales is $15 on Switch right now, but they always run sales for them. So if you're thinking about picking it up, you could probably grab it for like half off, or I think they've even done like 75% off and stuff like that. So, um, but yeah, we released it at 15. I think we did like a launch deal for like 33% off for like the first couple days it went up on the store. Um, I didn't really touch on it, but yeah, see, yeah, it's on Steam sale right now. I didn't really touch on it, but pricing your game too, making sure that your target audience is cool with like your price point that you set. I think that comes into play. You can actually kind of almost like game the platform that you're selling on. So like, and then Nintendo Switch had like a big thing where like people were putting their game at $1, having like tens of thousands of people buy it for $1, and that would bump their game up to like the most bought games on Nintendo Switch, and it would be at like the very top of the list, and then it would just snowball from there, right? Like people just see it for $1 on like the top of this thing, and then they make like hundreds of thousands of dollars off of it, right? So um, working each individual platform to your advantage. If they do have features like that, definitely something looking into and like learning the mechanics of like how the stores automate the promotion of like their popular games and stuff. It's definitely something like to look into and learn and then use to your advantage if possible.
um, I've always wondered about like just reaching out to journalists and stuff like that, since I'm extraordinarily introverted and don't really like to make those contacts. So I'm curious, like, do you have any idea about how many of your messages actually resulted in, a success or any sort of feelings around that?
Yeah. Let's see. I emailed like when I was running the Kickstarter, I contacted hundreds of people. I would probably guess like maybe like 1 out of 20 if I was lucky. I would really try to do my best to when I was like contacting a journalist to reference like an article that they had written, which is typically how I found them in the first place. Like I would like look up like Ocean Horn, which is another Zelda like that FTG made. I looked up Ocean Horn articles and I would find the journalist, and there's always like a contact email. So I did have somewhat of a template, like a pre-written, pitch that I would put in the email, but I would also be like, oh, hey, I read this article on Ocean Horn. I'm making a game similar that I think you might really dig. And then I would, paste my pitch paragraph in there with some screenshots or whatever. Say something like, "Oh, I'd love to work with you, or answer interview questions, or whatever you want to do." Um, Worst case scenario, they just never message you back, right? Best case scenario, you get like a million eyes on an article for your upcoming game. Uh, and if you're sending out stuff like that, you can also like link over to like a Steam early access page or a Kickstarter or whatever. You can try to like snowball that, and yeah. So Macaroni says like a thing to think about when pricing is like level out the worth of your game. Yep, and see if your target audience have the appropriate income for your game, right? Yeah, those are the big ones I'd say. I think platforms also kind of like dictate the price points. Um, Making sure your game kind of like fits in with other similar games, matching their price points or beating them. Like if you're publishing a game to like iOS or like a mobile platform, uh, price it accordingly. Like I don't think a lot of people would pay $60 for like an iPhone game, right? Even though it might be worth $60, I don't think people would probably buy it on there. Like I don't know. My impression of like mobile stores is people just want to pay like a buck or maybe $5 or a pay to play type deal or something like that. So I might like if I were to release like Blossom Tales on mobile devices, probably do a lot to like tailor it to the mobile device, like the controls and all that stuff, and price at a different price point. Something that more suitable for like a mobile market. So yeah. All right, I got 5 minutes left. Anyone else have any questions out there? Loud and clear. I'm sorry. Oh, so the Switch sales. Oh, the long tail. Yeah. Okay. Um, I would say it definitely tapers off, right? I would say let's see, compared to our first months, like we're like maybe 10%, if even, of like release, which Blossom Tales is like 2 years old, right? But it's still making like maybe like between 5 and 10% of what it did when it first launched. I mean, you do see bumps in that tail, like for sales. whenever those go off. So, we'll see pretty nice spikes for sales, like depending on what we're running it at. Blossom Tales has dropped down to I think 33% is the lowest it's gone. I may be wrong about that, but at least 50%, right? Like for sure. Um, so I know my publisher is kind of like holding on to bump, like doing a special sale at $1. I'm not even sure if they ever will do that. Um, but I could see them doing that to like continue to generate revenue, like dropping it down to like $1 for a sale or something. So it's kind of like the long milk. You want to get all the people that are willing to buy your game at full price to buy it at full price. You want to get all the people that are willing to buy it at 75%, 50%. So you kind of like step down the price of the game over the lifespan of it to continue like generating those revenues. So um, it's definitely still Blossom Tales is still making great money up on the Switch though. Even after being out for years and like not being in promotions or any major articles, still making like really good money and even better money when there are sales, right? So um yeah, does that answer your question? Oh, sure. Cool. That's a great question, Hot Pocket. What do you do if you stop finding a game fun mid development? Keep working on it. If you found it fun, if you found it fun to begin with, and your play testers are still having fun, if you're sending it out to people, they're still having fun. Um, keep plugging on it. You might hate it at that point, but that's just because you played it so much, and like you've been sitting and looking at it so closely under a microscope for like the duration of your development. Um, that you might like hate it. I remember by the end of Blossom Tales, I had played through Blossom Tales like literally hundreds of times. And it got horrible, right? Like it's like, oh god, I had another playthrough, of the game. I don't want to do this. I'm going to do it anyways. So it was definitely a chore and then a little bit of mental torture mixed into there. Um, but I would let other people play it, and like they would have fun. And I can remember like what it used to be to have fun playing Blossom Tales and all that stuff. So even if you're not having fun playing it, but other people are, I'd say it's like worth continuing on with development of it, And if you're not having fun with it still, make it fun. If you have the timeline to add in new features that make it fun for you to play, add them in. Like if you're enjoying developing the game, um, it just makes it all that better. Yeah, sure. I can post a link to the crash course in the chat. Let me get a link here. Here we go.
All right, and that's it. Rob, thank you so much for taking time out to, just talk to us. I mean, I think everyone got a bunch of value from it. I'm gonna take the link to the slides. I'm gonna put it up with the recording in the thread. And Rob, I invite you to hang around. It really means a lot that you took the time out to talk to us, man.
Oh yeah, for sure. If anyone has any questions afterwards, or you want me to play test your game or whatever, feel free to ping me. I'd be absolutely happy to, help out. And yeah, I'm like just staying at home, nothing to do really, but play video games and work on games and talk to other people about making games. So for sure. And thanks again for having me. I had a great time talking to you guys and kind of like solidifying the steps I go through and making a game. And so I found it, you know, totally beneficial for myself as well.
Thanks so much. This has been really, really helpful. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for listening, guys. I gotta go jump over to dinner or my girlfriend's gonna kill me. So take care and stay in touch and give me a shout if you need to. Thanks.
All
She
right.
literally will kill him too. Tell Nancy
Yeah,
I said
she
I
will.
love
All right.
her.
All right, cool. Later, guys.
Later, guys.
Bye.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah, man.